So a very, very warm welcome to everybody who has found the time, space to tune in, to check in to our shared community realm in here together. And yeah, once again, real pleasure to be here myself, and looking forward to continuing our exploration. And perhaps at this point in time, it's worth just kind of noting, deep into the week's exploration, we can also feel a sense of enoughness. It's like, let's just rest in to what we've already explored and open to, and kind of developed some skill with. And yeah, it's really worth recognizing that and having that as an intention. It's actually enough things here. I have a sense of how to play with my experience a little bit more skillfully, able to soothe, ease, calm, all of this. But also, for some of us, it's going to be a helpful day to actually build upon many of the things that we've touched into, what we've explored, what we've offered into the space, because they're all pointing towards the same possibility for us. Yeah. So before we leap into further with this, I'll just give a slight overview. I'm going to give a little reflection in a moment. Then we'll open to a quiet meditation together where I'll drop in the occasional idea, reflection of the reflection into a way of practicing that, a way of bringing that into being. And from there, I would like us to have a good period of time where anyone who has a question or reflection to do with that, we can see if there's any refinement of our shared exploration needed from that basis. So if you have a question and it comes up to you, we'll have time for that, the last 10 minutes or so, be free and engaging with that. If you're happy to type question in capital letters, it'll help me to see that among any other comments and use of the chat at that time. So we're going to go into a bit more of a way of looking at experience, taking up a view to do with a quality that the Buddha said, which is all conditioned things, all things which depend on conditions, which is actually everything we experience depends on some conditions for it to be there. All of those are dukkha. And it's like, all of the conditioned things are what? Painful, stressful, suffering. And the Buddha's goal of escaping the suffering of the world, when we hear it in a certain way, it can sound like there was like a world-weary sense to the projection of these teachings. Can be heard that way. Maybe it was that way even. Yeah, can even leave that possibility open. But what I want to say is the whole idea of escaping the suffering of the world can be really aligned to our best intentions too. So we started off this week, and I hope that you recall them, bring them to mind regularly, because they can be a real balm. What's your intention? What is it you wish to see more of? Why are you here? What do you want to get better at? What are you looking to plant the seeds of in your life? Speaking of the connection that we were looking for, thinking of love, what the Buddha actually called non-hatred, which actually is initially a lot more accessible. What if we really don't hate here? Don't get aversive. Don't get rejective. We don't have to love everybody necessarily. Maybe we do, but certainly we could start with not hating anybody, not allowing animosity to find a home in this heart. Supporting peace, harmony, well-being, in ourselves, for everyone, right? So there could be, a sense of world weariness. There could be a sense of rich possibilities of what we can do. So when we started off, we were practicing with anicca. We extended that anicca into can't bring lasting satisfaction. And I've emphasized all the way through, we're not saying this is true. We're not saying anicca is true. We're not saying inconstancy, impermanence is true, right? And one of the reasons I'm saying that is because it will seem to be. When we look this way, when we look with this characteristic in mind, it's inconstant, it will appear this way, as if it always had this characteristic. But if we don't look at it this way, it will appear the other way. Yeah. And we will be able to get into a demanding relationship, a prioritizing things that won't last kind of way, as if they will last. Okay, now we can keep going into this more and more, and I'll probably touch on it again a little bit more tomorrow. But the most important thing to say about these characteristics of existence that we can look at as a view is that the view will shape what appears. Yeah. So we can keep that at the front of our heart and mind as we continue with dukkha, saying all conditioned things are dukkha. And we might feel quite uncomfortable about that. All conditioned things are anicca and dukkha, right? It's not synonymous only. So yesterday we used cannot bring lasting satisfaction. And interestingly, we can actually go much further than that. And in a sense, step away from involving anicca altogether in this. In a certain way, a less complicated teaching is often the more profound, right? Things, objects, events, somebody's opinion of me, right? None of those things actually contain the satisfaction that we feel in relation to them at times, that we project onto them. And we can know this, and hopefully we've experienced this to some degree through the week already, because when we change the way of relating to them, we get ease. It's not that they went away, and it's not that they came into being, right? That we suddenly got to them, got the thing we wanted. And this is the core point of these teachings. On what does dukkha depend? When dukkha's there, what else is there? This demanding, this contraction, this reactivity, this rejection, this grabbing on, all of that comes with it. And if we don't have those, regardless of the coming and going of things, we get some well-being. Yeah. So we've made an error in our appraisal of existence. All of us have, and it's been fine. It hasn't mattered. It hasn't, what would we say? It's like the survival algorithm hasn't been mucked up by the fact that we've made a misappropriation. So we often feel ease when we get what we want. Yeah, and including within that, what we want is also getting rid of what we don't want. Yeah, and we feel, but was the happiness in the thing? In the external event, in another's opinion of us, becoming more favorable? Is it one of the core ingredients of the things? Yeah. Or was it actually, as the teachings say, changing our way of relating? Another way of saying it is happiness something we released that was unblocked, but it was already there? Yeah. Profound teaching. Really take your time with this, really kind of chew it over and actually evaluate, estimate, investigate your life through this lens. We are affected and affect our lives by habitual modes that suggest that happiness is in phenomena. It cannot be that way. Yeah. The factory of satis does not exist. Yeah, satisfactory would be the making of enoughness. Things make me enough. So if we think about literal factories or things, advertisers lie really that, get this and you'll be happy, as if there's a vat of enoughness in a factory. Yeah. And they just pour a bit of that into each of the things. And when you get it, you kind of drain it out and fill yourself with with enoughness. So, satisfactory. It makes enoughness satisfactory. More the sense that we bring the happiness with us. Yeah. So there's a story we could use, very short version of it. I'll give you, and sometimes I open this out as a questions and response kind of time. Like, when does happiness happen? They measured people wearing anodes and coming into a shopping place, and they were given, a good amount of money on a credit card, and that's just to find something they want, something that brings them, sparks joy in them, or whatever the phrasing would have been, and they can have it, they can buy it. Yeah. And the question would be, where does maximum happiness happen? Is it being, having anodes struck on your head, being given a credit card, walking into the shop, seeing that thing, that piece of clothing, or that gadget, or whatever it is that you really want? And, see, or is it a moment when you see, oh, that would work in my life, that would fit my body, or whatever it is? Is it, you know, trying it on for the first time? Is it paying for it? Is it getting it in the bag, walking out of the shop, getting home with it? Where would it be? Where would maximum happiness happen? And what they discovered was maximum happiness happens in that moment just before you buy it. Yeah. Which actually, interestingly, would mean you could stop just before buying things and actually maximize the happiness, go through that whole process, and then put it back on the shelf, and someone else could have the same experience. And that would suggest of quite a good sustainability practice. So that's an interesting thing. So actually it comes in the moment of minimizing the demand for it. And that's suggestive of the teachings. But there's a second question that we could actually ask is, where did the happiness come from? And let's be clear, they were measuring excitation of the skin, not actually the emotional qualities of deep happiness. But whichever way we see it, where did happiness come from? Where was the ingredients for happiness? It was in us, we could say, before the anodes were put on, before the credit card was given, before we went into the shop, before that thing was fabricated in the factory. Yeah. And so we can take this as a teaching prop, as a prompt, rather. What if we were to say, whatever it is in the world, and again, we're not just getting world weary, we're just saying, whatever it is, whatever phenomena is meeting us, it doesn't contain the satisfaction from its own side. So this is still going to be a very beautiful teaching, right? It sounds always, it's just like dancing on the edge of rejection of the world. Well, everything's meaningless. It doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that. Remember, the Buddha's teachings are saying there is a lasting happiness available for you. But it does mean coming to your senses about where it could be. Yeah. So the etymology again is quite useful here. Unsatisfactory. Okay, not dissatisfactory. Although I'll come around to this. That actually works quite well as well, but for other reasons. Unsatisfaction. So satis is enoughness. Factory is the making of things. Yeah. So it makes enoughness. Unsatisfactory is to say it does not. It doesn't. It doesn't make enoughness. Dissatisfaction is similar to like distraction, is to draw apart. Yeah, when we feel distracted, we feel pulled apart. Contraction is to be drawn together, and both of those are dukkha. Here, dissatisfaction is to be pulled away from satisfaction. The factory, the making of the pulling away from satisfaction. And we're not actually saying that. We're saying doesn't contain satisfaction. Yeah. And that hopefully gives us that feeling of non-reaction, a release. It's still a responsibility. We can respond to this thing, a creativity. Yeah. And then something amazing happens. When this is working, when this is flowing, when we can able to drop this in with the sensitivity, the calmness, the well-being, it brings the joy of renunciation. Right? And that may be a phrase that you're familiar with. It may seem really odd that there is joy in renunciation, but we really know that feeling. We stop waiting. We're no longer damming up the release of our happiness, and we release into the release. And happiness comes from that sensibility. This won't bring lasting satisfaction. And the demand drops away very profoundly at times. The heart mind's released. Yeah. And it can sound like something very negating. In fact, if we were even to say, this thing is bringing dissatisfaction, yeah, even the pleasant things, if we just said that's dissatisfactory, which isn't what I'm suggesting we do, but even if we did that, it often still works because it inclines the heart mind to release. And that's the key here. But again, we don't live like it's true. We don't have to take it as truth. We can take it as a way of looking. And so much wholesome joy comes with renunciation. The kindness of self-liberating, the kindness of metta coming through as a friendliness to all things, equality to all of these things. And we're not rejecting the painful, we're not grabbing onto the pleasant. Unsatisfactory. A misperception to think it's in things. Okay. So I think this is really beautiful and profound and bigger than we have time fully to go into. But let's practice it together. And I'm really happy to field any kind of questions, how much we can clarify this. It's a lot to package into 7 o'clock little download there, but I think it's so worth hearing about and so beautiful to practice. So I wanted to share it with you, and I hope it supports your good morning experience. So remembering our deepest intentions for our lives, what we wish to see more of, and inviting the body into a comfortable shape to be able to explore that together for the next half an hour or so. And so we're tapping into these ancient wisdom teachings that suggest amazing possibilities for us. We can also remember that it's worth practicing even if it turns the dial of happiness the slightest amount. So we can really hold our expectations of ourselves and of these teachings lightly and yet firmly, a good grip on their possibilities. As we begin with the essential work of checking in with the body, are there any areas of tension you might want to soothe with an out breath, with kindness? We don't need to get rid of anything, but it really benefits us to soothe the aversion, soothe the sense, I have to get rid of this so I can be okay, so I can be enough. All we have to do is meet as well as we can. Non-aversion, less aversion. Non-aversion is reached through lessening aversion step by step. Also important for us to notice the emotional quality of our life right now. How's the heart doing? Likely a lot going on in our life which touches us, a lot going on in our world. There can be a feeling that we don't want this painfulness, this unpleasantness. But we also don't want aversiveness towards it, rejection of it. This is what's here. Again, soothing as best we can. Might be with the breath, almost giving a hug around any aches and pains. And this emotional tonality also relates to the mood of the intellect, the attitudes that flow through, even the particular thinking. Just noticing how malleable the mind is today, how interested or not, energetic or dull, or even restless. And noticing that if it's too energetic, let's pay attention to the breath, but really emphasize the out breath. Really just pay attention for the next 3 breaths to the out breaths and their capacity to ground, release, slow down, bring us to the back of the body. And if there's dullness, let's emphasize in the next 3 breaths the in breath, the vitality, the aliveness, the alignment, brightening. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit, and encouragement to play with this idea that if we find the energy is a bit dull, see if we can brighten it in those ways. And if it's a bit restless, see if we can soothe and open ground in those ways. If we're working with the sounds, that can be through the kind of energy with which we receive the sounds. Can add more interest as if we've never really heard a sound before, and in many ways we haven't. We've only had these perception impressions. See if we can really get to know what is a sound, a vibration, all of that. And if there's this restlessness, can it be that we just permit, allow, widen that open palm of listening, peacefulness in the listening? And it's going to keep changing, keep fluctuating. So you have to keep checking and then applying that. And I suggest using this kind of 3 breaths model. But you can do whatever way you like. So do that and then rest. Check after a bit. 3 breaths with a particular inclination. And rest. Like we're steering a ship. Noticing where the attention is landing. Noticing also the attitude that we're paying attention with. There might be a projection of a sense of satisfaction in fixing, getting rid of. Changing that view, unsatisfactory. Actually, it's that does not contain satisfaction. We say it with conviction. May or may not agree that it's true. We're trying it on as a lens. Satisfaction comes in non-demanding. Satisfaction can come through adjusting the energy levels. From restlessness or dullness to a vibrant tranquility. Not a deadness, vibrant tranquility, alive peacefulness. We can head there through adjusting the breathing, adjusting the listening. And when we get entangled, we can notice this does not contain satisfaction. Like an upgrade to our view. Useful. True or not, useful. Unsatisfactory. Feel free to continue practicing in ways that are helpful for you. It might be any way you've learned in the past. It might be using the 3 breaths model of practice, regulating the energy levels. Be having an open palm of attention that is kind or equanimous to all things that arise, welcomed and released. Anytime attention gets entangled, hooked, pulled into this and thatting, or planning, scheming, future, past, storytelling, we could just drop in, this is unsatisfactory. Whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, it's unsatisfactory. It doesn't contain satisfaction. Find a resolution through releasing demandingness. Not as a way to live, but as a way to practice, to understand these teachings a little deeper. Unsatisfactory. satisfactory. Release the demands of getting satisfaction from this. Perhaps stop waiting, stop damming up, and release into release. Uncontract, open. Maybe welcome, allow, release what's held on to. Guiding you in the last moments, just check in. How's the body? How's the heart? How's the intellect, the mind? And just having that little appreciation, victory lap around the being, what we've cultivated, appreciating, absorbing some of the nourishment of that, drinking it in. As we drink in, we can also radiate out. May the blessings of this practice, this time of shared community, be a balm into the world, be of benefit to all those who need it most. May that be so. May it be so. Let's transition from the silence, the stillness, to the community space. And may this practice also support us to live in alignment with our intentions through today, through every day. So I hope that this is an interesting, helpful way of framing a very profound dimension of the teachings. A lot of appreciation to Rob Pabea for opening my sensibility to this. And I've also built on his ideas here. Many of you will know Rob Pabea. He was the resident teacher at Gaia House for many years, over a decade, and wrote the wonderful book, Seeing That Frees. And, you know, this owes a lot to that. But I was really struck by it and started exploring and investigating for myself this kind of sensibility of unsatisfactoriness and how that's actually distinct from dissatisfaction, but not in everyday usage, not colloquially, as we might say, Yeah? Dissatisfaction, unsatisfactory. Look it up in the dictionary. They're synonyms for each other. Yeah. Dissatisfaction, unsatisfactory. So they're kind of used in different ways, slightly different words. Yeah. Um, so we can open into that, go into that some more. But it turns out that in this practice, it doesn't really matter if you're thinking of dissatisfaction. As I said, it does actually still create quite a lot of release. Yeah. So I see there's a couple of questions in the chat there. Happy to move on to those. And actually, maybe, yeah, let's move on to those. So there's a short question from Andrea. What is the 3 breath method? So it's basically, rather than trying to be with, half an hour's worth of breaths, we actually just slice it down into something small and manageable. 3 is a number we don't actually need to count. It's either the very first one, the very last one, or the middle one. So it's not engaging the intellectual faculty. Nothing wrong with engaging the intellectual faculty, but it doesn't do that so much. It doesn't create quite so much activity. It's like, I'm on that first breath, I'm on that last breath, I'm on the middle breath. Simple kind of metric there. And then what we do is we set ourselves a small challenge. Can I be with 3 breaths all the way through? Could be, yeah. But here we were utilizing it in a slightly different way. We were emphasizing more, let's say, the out breath, because there was restlessness, and out breaths tend towards being more calming for us, more releasing, more grounding, more soothing, more softening. And that's what we need when we're restless. Yeah. Another case could be, I'm not really coming to life very much, and so I need more of the energization, the brightness, the cells expansion, or that kind of thing that we can feel or imagine feeling through the in-breath. Yeah, and so we emphasize some part of the breath. So we take this 3 breath method and we can start to play with it, be creative with it from there. Don't know where it came from. I might have invented it. And then I'm calling it the 3 breath method, just as a way of shorthand for that. Not that it kind of exists out in the world and you can share with any other teacher. Oh, do you teach the 3 breath method? Probably not. Probably never heard of it. But it's just another of those little tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. Find really helpful. So I use it regularly. Yeah, makes the practice more accessible and means that we're actually doing the thing rather than getting to the end of half an hour and, maybe by luck we hit 1 breath every 5 minutes or something like this. Here we establish that and you can build on them. Let's do 3 breaths of in breaths. Let's do 3 breaths of out breaths. Then we do 3 breaths of in breaths and out breaths together. We've got 9 breaths linked together now. And that's about 1.5 minutes of practice, which is quite a period of time to be really with the experience. But because there's a series of challenges that build upon each other, then you can work from there. And you can add higher counts. 3's not. 3 is the magic number, as De La Soul sang, but it's not the only magic number for us. Okay, longer question here from Claire. Let's go for this. Thanks for asking, Claire. Very interesting and helpful to hear regarding happiness. I reflected on what you shared, as for me, although pretty content in my life, not interested in material objects, I feel I have done for years that having my own garden would make me happy. I have lived in the flat for years. My question is how I can see this need I feel is okay, or bring some peace that I may not have my own garden. I do spend time in parks, open spaces. Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Claire. Yeah. So having my own garden would make me more happy. Yeah, is kind of what we're implying there. Being able to plant things and grow things and see them come into being, or just have that space that we can step into, because nature is healing, wholesome, beautiful thing to be in for all of this. Yeah. As you're saying, you don't own your own garden, and owning nature is actually an interesting fabrication that we've created through our society. Yeah, that people can own this, develop this, build on this, sell it to other people, and that doesn't bring happiness, does it? And owning things doesn't actually bring happiness. A lot of the happiness comes in that collaboration with nature. It's like, oh, plant these seeds, nourish them, support them. The sun shines, the rain comes. Oh, it got too cold and everything died. All of that. I think that's a lot of what we really appreciate. All the birds coming into this space. So it could be that we actually look at this and say there isn't any satisfaction in the garden itself. Yeah. But there is a sense of alignment, beauty, and all of this in supporting myself and others to be in contact with nature. And it could be that we take over a piece of land. It could be that we apply for an allotment if we're in a country where they do that kind of thing, where you can be allotted a little piece of land and you can grow those things. So getting clear about, so what is it about the garden that would really support me? And are there other ways that I can go about that? Yeah. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Might come down to a very pragmatic thing. I don't think, and we could say that the Buddha's actually saying this, don't desire anything. Could be a way of holding these teachings. I think it's actually to say, don't be confused about the apparent happiness that comes from getting sensory pleasures, but actually be able to relate and interact with the world in ways which support our deepest intentions and peacefulnesses and harmonizations and inspirations and aspirations in that way. It's always something much bigger than what the mind is fiddling around with as a problematic thing. So yeah, Kaz has a question here that I think is really helpful. Are you saying that happiness is just here all the time and that we don't see it as soon as we grasp through it, not seeing it right in front of us? Um, kind. That's weird. My camera's gone funny. Okay, fine. Don't know. Oh, maybe I disconnected it. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, kind of. Yes, that's what we're saying. Oh, bother. There is an unsatisfactory situation with the camera here. But I'm not going to try and fix it and fiddle with it too much. Now I've managed to make the monitor turn off as well. Basically, rely on this key point. I'm not saying this is true. That's the most important thing here, right? So I'm not saying happiness is here all the time, and I'm not saying it's independent of getting things. If people are starving, a lot of happiness will come through getting food, getting a meal, getting supported in those ways. Yeah. The real thing, though, is if we hold this view, does more happiness come or less, or does happiness disappear? Yeah, that's what we're really interested in. That's what's the most interesting thing here, and that's why. And this might relate to Claire's question, which I haven't read yet, but I kind of see some of the words in. It might relate to this point: is it actually doesn't matter if we're saying this thing is dissatisfactory. Yeah. Because if it reduces the demand, then that actually becomes the outcome of the practice in a certain way. But I like this use of unsatisfactory and that using that etymology, which I didn't hear anyone else sharing before I've been putting it out there. But I think it's really a helpful way. And it also steps us away from, well, it's unsatisfactory because it doesn't last. Yeah, it's dissatisfactory because it doesn't last. We actually don't need that. It's actually much more penetrating, much more deep, much more beautiful. Yeah. Um, so we hold this view to lessen in those ways. Yeah, that helps. Okay, so Claire, could you please? I do apologize for my camera glitch there. Anyway, could you please say a bit more about the distinction between non-demanding, the view of unsatisfaction, and disinterest or resignation, especially as it manifests in relationships with partner and family? Hey, you just need to unplug it and plug it back in again. Oh dear, I'm such a klutz. I just turned my monitor off again. Okay, so sorry, the chat's flowing along and I can't see the question. The distinction between non-demanding, the view of unsatisfaction, disinterest, or resignation. Yeah. So clarity again, it's a view that we're taking because it's helpful, because it's useful. Yeah. We're looking at and exploring for ourselves and building up a confidence. We'll touch into this a little bit more later on. That we want to support non-demanding. And if resignation doesn't do that for us, and it probably doesn't, if disinterest doesn't actually do that for us, and it probably doesn't, then it's not a helpful lens. for us to take on. If it does do it, then that's a different matter, right? And maybe we'll see that can do those things for us. Yeah. But anyway, I want to just put something in the chat there that this evening I run a session called Freeing Perceptions, very, very, very related to what we're exploring here. And so if that feels something of help for you, it runs on the first Thursday of the month. Much more space and time for these kind of questions and what we're tapping into, yeah, and what we're exploring here. But yeah, the view of unsatisfactory is a view that we're taking purposefully to see if it actually helps to manifest in our relationships, in our lives, more wholesomeness, more beauty, more helpfulness. And yeah, I think it can. I feel like it can. And I wish that it does for you. And that's why it's offered from the Buddha right through to this moment here and now. All right. So blessings to you for your practice and for your life in general. And if you can make it tomorrow, I think there's another step along this journey that could be really beautiful to explore. So I hope to see you then. All right. Take care. Bye for now.